Welcome to Football with Brownie. I hope you're well, keeping safe, keeping each other safe, and spreading the love during this pandemic. Because we all need a little bit of loving, Gordon, don't we? Right.
Certainly.
Please check a ticker below, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe Football with Brownie on YouTube. That's my Twitter handle, Facebook Football with Brownie, and the Instagram. It gives me absolute pleasure to speak to a fellow Merthyr, fellow Merthyr man, but he is a Merthyr god, I tell you. Ladies and gentlemen, former Fulham, Man City, Wales, Wrexham, and of course Merthyr Tydfil legend, Gordon Davies. Hi, Gordon. How are you doing?
Hi, Brownie. I'm okay, mate. It's nice to have such an introduction like that, and to have the word God in the introduction.
Oh,
gee
absolutely.
Whiz, mate. I've got to live up to something special here.
Well, I've been putting the word around that we're going to be having this chat, and honestly, people like Bez Newman and everyone else, they're saying, well, you have to say he's Mr. Davies to me because of your teaching days.
Yes, I've had a conversation with Bez on Facebook, and I've had to tell him, and really a lot of the kids that I taught at Gwenlloyn, I've had to tell them to stop calling me Mr. Davies because it's difficult for them, I know, and I've been in exactly the same position when I went back to a school reunion 20 years after we left. And still, you see the teachers and you call them Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so. And it is difficult, but I did say to Bez, I said, forget it, mate. I said, just call me Gordon and that will do. But it's good that people remember you, because I was only teaching in Merthyr for really 18 months before I joined Fulham after coming out of college. So it was a good time there. I really enjoyed teaching the kids, even though I think if you spoke to them now, they were all very good behaved or well behaved children. Some of them weren't. I'm not going to mention them. Yeah, I'm not going to mention them. But it was a good time. And if football hadn't have got in the way, I'd probably still be teaching today because I absolutely loved it.
So where were you brought up, Gordon? I was a Dowlais boy, Winifred Street in Dowlais.
Yeah, I was brought up in Dowlais. I lived in Dowlais in Cross Francis Street.
Geez, only up the road.
Yeah. So I was there first of all, and then we moved down to Georgetown, and then we went back up went up to the Gurness estate, and from there up to Rhydybeirdd back in Dowlais. So in a way, before I left Merthyr, I went sort of back very close to home as a crow flies, probably about 400 yards from where I was sort of living when I was a wee baby. So those are the places. Those are the places I remember.
What was it? Well, I think it's about Cross Francis to Winifred Street. It's about 2 streets away, really, isn't it? Because it's 2 streets away. I can't believe it.
Well, when you mention that now, I don't know whether I should be in awe of being 2 streets away from you or the other way around. So I don't know.
The check is definitely in a post for that one, I tell you. So you started teaching when you were on the books of Merthyr. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how did that Merthyr thing all start?
Well, I was always the type of kid who wanted to play a better standard of football. And you go from when Georgetown started in the 60s to sort of playing for different teams in the Merthyr League after I'd left Georgetown. And I played for a few in the Merthyr League, because although I probably can't remember them all, but from the Merthyr League, I went down to play with Hoovers, and then people in Merthyr will remember Philip Fly, who unfortunately passed away a year or so ago. He was involved with Hoovers at the time, and he got me, I suppose, promoted from the Merthyr League team into the amateur league team. And the year that I played with the amateur league team, we had some fantastic players there. We won the amateur league, which was, I think, the first time that Hoovers had done it. And I was thinking to myself, right, we've done this, we've achieved this. Where can I go from the amateur league? And the only place, or the next step up, was obviously Merthyr, but playing in what I used to class as the reserves, which was the Welsh League. So I just went training. And one of my very good friend's brother, Pat Murphy, was playing for Merthyr at the time. So I just went up and played in the Welsh League and tried to do as well as I could. Things started to go well for me, and I think I was only playing in the Welsh League for maybe 6 months, 7 months, a half a season. And of course, because I was still a teacher training college, then I was only playing for Merthyr when I was back home in the holidays or when college had finished. So it was a very sort of stop-start situation with the Welsh League. But you're training with better players. You're training with the Southern League team, which was the first team, which you're obviously in awe of, because I used to go down to Pendarren Park with my grandfather to watch Merthyr play. So these were the gods that I looked up to when I was a kid. So before I knew it, Mickey Lenahan, I think, had got an elbow in the face from one of the lovely centre halves playing in the Southern League, and broken his jawbone, or fractured his cheekbone. That was it. He fractured his cheekbone, and I was sort of, in a way, promoted into the Southern League team, and I found it to my liking. The players around me were great. They were feeding me with balls that I wanted, and literally within, I suppose, 18 months of playing in the first team. In the first season I got in, I played as a right winger. And I scored 30 goals from the wing, which is it basically is some going. But then again, because I could score goals, I very rarely crossed it. So
right, okay. So, in other words, you're a greedy so-and-so, Gordon.
Greedy son of a gun. And like I say, when you score 30 goals in your first 6 months, 8 months in the Welsh League, Southern League, then Mickey Lenahan got injured, and I went into the middle of the two up front, linked up with Paul Cavill, main striker at the time. We clicked. We had some very, very good midfield players playing for us, and the Doc, Ian Doherty, had come down from Albion Rovers, and because his first touch was good, I knew his second touch was a pass. So as soon as it was going towards him, I fed off him. He put me in, and things went right for me. And as I say, when things are going right for you and you're up front, you try things, they come off. I'd scored 35 goals by, I think, the second week in February, and that was my first season in that level of football in the Southern League. So when you score that amount of goals in Southern League in those days, then you got noticed, and my name was banded about, and a few clubs started watching me.
So how long was it from like that? Was it? How long did they watch you for then, Gordon? Because
I think a few clubs, and Cardiff were one of them. They watched me for I think a good, what I'm led to believe, a good 6 months, and that was obviously when I was scoring goals from the beginning of the season through to January, February. But they only thing I can say is they were unsure of me, because they wanted me to go down in a way on a trial and play for the reserve team in the football combination as it was then. And my manager, Emrys Evans, said, no, you've watched him long enough. You either sign him, but he's not coming down for a trial, basically. Yeah. So, I could have gone down there. I could have had a poor game. They forget about you. Or I could have had a very good game and broken my leg in the last minute.
Yeah, that's right.
Emrys was very Merthyr orientated, and he didn't want me messed about, and he didn't want the club messed about. But I think quite a few clubs watched me 3 or 4 months before it all came to a head, and then I knew that I would be signing for someone, but it was just talking to a lot of clubs and finding out perhaps who I fancied playing for and who fancied me as well.
Yeah. Well, Fulham was your chosen destination. So talk us about that move and your time at Fulham and so on.
Well, it was because I got probably 3 or 4 ex-Swansea players playing for Merthyr at the time, sort of Dougie Rosser, Donny Payne, Di Jones, Mickey Lenahan. I obviously was always speaking to them about their time in league football, and they were always saying that Fulham Football Club they thought would suit me because they play good football. It's a good playing surface. The crowd are very knowledgeable. They're not going to get on your back if things are going badly for you. And by talking to them and trying to look at the squads of players that different teams had, and it just seemed as though Fulham was the right team for me at the time. And looking back on when I went there, I was expecting to be. I went there in the sort of late February, early March, and I was expecting to be in the reserves through March, through April, through May, then pre-season, and then possibly spending another 3, 4, 5 months trying to impress the manager at the beginning of the following season to try to get a game in the first team. Well, lo and behold, it came to, I think, 4 or 5 games before the end of the season, and Bobby Campbell, literally, we went up to Blackpool for an away game, and I thought I was travelling up there to be a bit of experience for me and being involved in that first team setup. And we went out on the pitch. We had a look around. We came back in the changing rooms. We all sat down. I wasn't really taking too much notice because I wasn't even expecting to be sub or playing. So I was just sort of looking around as if anything I could do to help the 2 youngsters that were doing the kit. And then he mentioned the team, and my name was mentioned. So I looked around as if to say, well, are you sure you've, I was looking, is there another Davis in the changing room? And then Ray Evans, who was captain, he just came up to me and he said, put his arm around me and said, okay, Ivor, give it your best tonight and all the best. And I thought, I'm playing. So I then went to the kit, the big kit bags that all the boots were in, like 50, 60 pairs of boots in there. And all the 2 kids were putting the kit out. They were getting the boots out. And I was looking for my boots. And the 2 kids were looking for my boots. And they weren't in because nobody expected me to be playing. So nobody packed my boots. So when you think, I am now going out to make my debut for Fulham Football Club in what was the old 2nd division, and I haven't got my boots. And I'm thinking, well, what can I wear? So in the end, I had to borrow somebody's pair of boots that wasn't playing. And because they were a size too big for me, I had to wear 2 pairs of socks. So when you start the night off like that, you don't really expect it to go well. And of course, people may know the story behind it, but I went out, I started running around like a blue arse fly, trying to get involved, trying to get on the end of things. The centre half, who was a very experienced centre half, a chap called Peter Sudderby, went up for the corner, and I went back for him to mark him. I'm not the biggest person. He's got a good 6 inches on me, so he's standing in front of me. So I was trying to get as close to him as possible. And the ball comes in, and suddenly he's fallen down in front of me. And I've looked around. I've heard the whistle go. I've looked around, and the referee is pointing to the penalty spot, because I looked down at the floor, and his leg is between my leg and his foot is behind my ankle. And he's literally put his foot through my legs, gone to go forward, made it look as though I've tripped him up and fallen on the floor. So a penalty was given away. And bearing in mind that this is now 6 minutes into the game of my full debut, and you could see the colour draining from my face. My face was the same colour as the white shirt that I was wearing. And the captain came across to me, Ray Evans. He had a word with me, shall I say, in no uncertain terms. He was nose to nose with me. He was poking me in the chest, asking me, did I trip him up? Did I do something wrong? And I just said, no, I didn't touch him. He said, right. He said, you F off up to the halfway line. Don't you come back over the halfway line tonight. And if you don't score, I will chin you after the game. So I slowly walked away to the halfway line, and I'm thinking, the first 6 minutes haven't gone too well for me in this game. And literally, I was shaking in, I can't say in my boots, I was shaking in somebody else's boots, thinking, what have I done and what have I taken on? And everybody was looking at me as if to say, now, what have we signed? We've seen him in training. He looks pretty decent, but what have we signed? Because let's start again. So fortunately, this story could take probably about 2 hours to tell. But the good thing was I created the equaliser at the in the beginning of the second half for Les Strong. So we got back to 1-1, and I'd done something good. And then about 15, 20 minutes later, Les Strong put a crossover from the left wing, and he pulled it back to the edge of the box, and I was standing in the D. And literally, it was a perfect ball. It was just dropping nicely. There was nobody within 2 yards of me that was going to put me under pressure. So I took my time. I didn't snatch it. I hit the ball on the volley with my left foot. And it literally screamed off my foot. It's one of those that you catch and you don't even feel it coming off your foot. And it didn't raise more than 12 inches off the floor. It squirted into the bottom right-hand corner. Keeper didn't have a chance. I went off like an absolute sort of rabbit in the headlights, doing I don't know what. I don't know how I celebrated. And we ended up winning the game 2-1. So everything went well for me. The following day, the first headline that I saw was Welsh Wizard wins it for Fulham. And from that day, I think, the crowd were on my side. There were only about probably 300 away supporters, with it being a night game and a midweek game. But I think that fortunately for me, it went well on the day, because I would hate to think if we'd lost that game, especially 1-0 or 2-3, 4-0, and I hadn't played well, how would things have turned out? Would I have spent a successful career at Fulham, or would have ended up being transferred in the next sort of season?
Exactly. Well, that was the first goal of what was loads ago, because you still are to this day for Fulham's all-time record goal scorer. And
yes, yeah.
In the day of football going quite the opposite to, I would say our day now, Gordon. I'm 42, and I don't think the rules changed much from my days of playing to your days of playing. It's basically the game has gone all in favour of the attacking kind of players, where rather than the defensive kind of players. And you would think with that, attacking players would score more goals, but obviously not in the case of Fulham because it's your good self who's still a record goal scorer.
Well, it does seem strange because I retired, 1991, which is effectively sort of 30 years ago, which is a lifetime for some people. And yes, I've held on to that record for 30 years. It's not going to change hands in the next at least 4 or 5 years because Mitrovic, who everybody thought was going to beat my record, and I penciled in a season 24-25 when he was going to overtake me, but he's had a poor season. He's had COVID. It looks like he wants to leave. And after Mitrovic, you've got Tom Cairney, and Tom Cairney's on 37 goals or 32, and my record is 178. So
you got a little way left.
It's going to take a few years yet, but I've always said to everybody, Brownie, I've always said to everybody, records are there to be broken. And one day, yes, mine will be broken. And a lot of Fulham supporters call me stupid for saying it because they say it'll never be beaten. But people would have, when I was playing, people would have said that the 2 records that I hold were from the 60s, and I broke them in the late 80s. And one was Johnny Haynes's league and cup scoring record, and the other was a centre forward called Bedford Jezard, and he scored 154 league goals for Fulham, but never one cup goal. So he held the league. Although everybody thought of Johnny Haynes as the record goal scorer, nobody ever said about Bedford Jezard being the league goal scorer. So those are the 2 records that I hold, and I'm very proud to hold them, and I've held them for this, as I say, 30 years.
And all of Merthyr is very proud that he still hold it now. Sir, well, I'm calling you sir, and I wasn't even a people.
You can only do that. You can only do that if I get a knighthood, and I think I'm nowhere near getting those. But it's great to be the record goal scorer. I hold it in great esteem, and as I say, I represent not only the other clubs I played for, but I represent Fulham in a way wherever I am and wherever I go because of that record. So, but it will be beaten one day. But at the moment, it looks as though I'm probably going to be in my 70s before it's beaten, and then we'll see what happens anyway.
Yeah, no. So from Fulham, he went to Manchester City.
No, I didn't go. I went to Chelsea.
Oh, right. Sorry, I thought it was Man City, Chelsea. Sorry, Chelsea. Yeah. So, okay. This is what I was going to ask you later on in the interview. I do apologise, sir. Okay, so don't come across a bad rivalry between Fulham and Chelsea, but was there any kind of
animosity?
Yeah, I think it's a good word to use. That's a good word to use.
Yeah, you got to remember I'm a teacher, so
yeah. Can you come on every interview I have? Can you come on every interview I have to sort out my grammar?
So before I answer the question, sit up straight.
I am now.
There was a situation where I was at the end of my contract. Fulham were just trying to get as much money for me, and they were signing me on a week to week contract. So I was signing a week to week contract, which enabled me. So I'd go back to the club on a Friday to sign a contract, a 1 week contract, which allowed me to play on the Saturday and the Tuesday, and then I'd have to go into the office again to sign another contract the following Friday. So it was becoming a very sort of a lethargic situation from my point of view, because you're thinking, come on, can't we sort this contract out? And I didn't want to leave, but Fulham were being basically a pain in the arse about it. So Chelsea were the only club to come in for me at that particular time.
Okay.
So they took it to tribunal, and
Right.
the long and short of the tribunal was that Chelsea offered £90,000, sorry, £60,000, because I was 28 years old. Fulham wanted £300,000, and then it was down to the tribunal to try and work out what I was on, what Chelsea were offering, how old I was, blah 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 blah. And at the end of the meeting at Lancaster Gate in London, the tribunal set the figure at 90,000 because of the low wages I was on at Fulham and what Chelsea had offered. And they set it at £90,000, and Chelsea were happy to pay that. So literally, that's how it came about. So I signed for Chelsea with the supporters. The supporters were very, very disappointed in me not going, but going to Chelsea.
Yeah.
They didn't know the full story, and hopefully, if I at some point in the future, if I get this book off the ground, then the full story will be in the book. But it was a situation that if I'd had a choice to go, for instance, do you want to go to Liverpool or do you want to go to Chelsea? Or do you want to go to Leeds United or do you want to go to Chelsea? I probably would have picked a different team. But Chelsea were now giving me the opportunity, and I knew it was going to be difficult with the partnership that they had up front of Dixon and Speedy. They were giving me the opportunity, even though I'd played international football, I'd never scored any goals in the first division, now the Premiership. So I literally took the opportunity to test my skills against the best. And the best was in the form of Man United. Liverpool were the best team in Europe in those days. Man City, Everton, and hopefully do it on a week-to-week basis. Obviously, that didn't quite work out. But when you think that I played 13 games for Chelsea in 12 months, I was uneasy. So therefore, I asked for a move. But in those 13 games, I scored 6 goals. And as I say, teams that I scored against were Everton, who won the league that season. I scored at home against Manchester United. I scored away at Anfield. So I sort of proved to people that I could score goals at that level. And that's when Chelsea, I've got to give great credit to Ken Bates.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Yeah.
the amount of stories I've heard about Ken Bates over the years.
I've got to. He did everything that we agreed, and he also instigated my move from Chelsea to Man City because he knew that I'd obviously put a transfer request in. Chelsea played up at Man City early in the season, and Man City hammered Chelsea. And the result of the game was Man City 0, Chelsea 1. And Ken Bates, who knew the vice chairman at Fulham, at Man City, Freddie Pye, because they were both at Wigan together. Right. So Freddie Pye turned around to Batesy after the game and said, I tell you what, we should have hammered you today. If we'd only had somebody that could put the ball in the back of the net, we would have stuffed you out of sight. He said, well, yes, I got to agree with you. He said, but we've got a lad at Fulham, at Chelsea, who wants away, a lad called Davies. So Freddie Pye sort of looked inquisitively at him and he said, what, Gordon Davies, the lad who used to be at Fulham? And he said, yeah. He said, he wants away, he's handed a transfer request. So Freddie Pye said, well, do you think he would speak to us? So he said, well, I don't know. I'll ask him. So I had a phone call 10:30 on the Saturday night asking me if I'd be interested in speaking to Manchester City. And I said yes. And he said, well, okay, Freddie Pye will phone you at 10 o'clock in the morning. And literally, I spoke to Freddie Pye at 10 o'clock. he arranged a flight from Heathrow up to Manchester on the Monday. I flew up to Manchester on the Monday. I spoke to him, Billy McNeil, and the secretary, Bernard Halford. I came back home to think about their offer. I flew back up on the Thursday and signed for Man City. And then I met all the lads on the Saturday at Watford. And I played my first game for Man City on the Saturday. Unfortunately, we lost. I didn't score, but I'm now within a week. I'm a Man City player, and thoroughly enjoyed it because I've supported Man City from a 16-year-old when I was there on schoolboy forms. So I've always wanted to do. Yeah, I've always wanted to do well against City because they thought I wasn't good enough at 16, and then they end up signing me at 28 years of age. So all good.
Yeah, no, my dad's a Man City fan, and I remember because he used to, because I big Cardiff fan, but because Cardiff were in the lower league while I was a youngster, he'd always treat me to a Man City Everton game.
Right.
And he would always be mentioning your name, Gordon. But regarding, I read a story. Maybe it automatically put your nose out of Chelsea. I'm sorry to go back to Chelsea a little bit there.
No, that's right. That's right.
But you were promised that during pre-season, if you score more goals than Speedy or Dixon, then you'd be given an opportunity in the first team. But is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
You actually scored more than both of them put together, and you still weren't given an opportunity.
No, it was unfortunate that John Hollins, who took over from John Neal in the summer, he pulled me to one side in pre-season training, and he knew that I was pushing for a first team place on a regular basis. And he said those words to me. And then when we were, I think, if I can remember, I think it was Arsenal at Highbury was the first game of that season. And you called me a greedy son of a whatever at the beginning of this interview. And yes, I was even more of that when I joined. When I had that pre-season at Chelsea. And I thought, right, well, I'll go out. I'll be even more greedier than normal. And if somebody's in a great scoring position, it's only pre-season, I'll still shoot. So, I had a great pre-season. I expected to be playing at Highbury. And then when the team was mentioned, and of course, in those days, I think it was only one sub. When the team and the sub and some non-playing squad members were travelling, I wasn't in the first team. I wasn't sub. I wasn't even travelling to watch the game. I was playing in the reserves somewhere, whether it was Swindon or Bristol Rovers or what have you. So I didn't say anything. I didn't want to upset the apple cart on a Friday sort of the training. So I went away. I played. I came back in on the Monday morning, went straight in to see John Hollins, and handed him an envelope. And he was in there with his right-hand man, which is a chap called Ernie Wally at the time. And I handed him an envelope, and he said, "What's this?" I said, "Oh, it's my transfer letter." And Ernie Wally was an old sort of like army sergeant type of person.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm just going to get ready for training. So John Hollins said, whoa, hang on a minute. We want to discuss this. And I just turned around and I said, no. I said, that's my transfer request. Take it to Batesy and tell him I want to move. And then Ernie Wally said, don't you walk out of this room. You stay here. We want to talk to you. And I just turned around and I'm not going to use the expression, but I told him to go away, shall we say. And I just walked out and went to training. And that was the start of the process of trying to get a move. And even then, I came in when Speedy was suspended, whether it was for one game or two games. I came in and played well and scored goals. But unfortunately, I think John Hollins, because the club thought they were going to lose him to Arsenal on the managerial side of things.
Yeah.
I think they pushed him into the job at Chelsea a bit too early because he was too nice to be a manager, and he still wanted to be everybody's friend.
Everybody's
And
friend.
I think honestly, he was too frightened to take the chance of either playing Kerry Dixon, David Speedie, and myself together, because he'd have to drop one of the other midfield players to fit me in. And he certainly wasn't strong enough to turn around, put me in the team instead of David Speedie. And if I scored goals, keep me in the team. If you go in and you're not scoring goals, you expect to be dropped. But I don't think he was strong enough, because I think he was frightened of the, I suppose, the way that A, Speedie was going to react, and B, how the supporters would react to Speedie being dropped. But we will never know, and it was just one of those situations.
That would have been a great trio, Gordon. You know, yourself, your good self, Speedie and Dixon. Speedie and Dixon were two greats as well. You know, any Chelsea fan.
As I say, I won't have a go at them in the interview. I might have a go at them in the book, but I won't have a go at them in the interview.
Well, I tell you what, when that book is ready, you're coming back on, I tell you.
Okay, sounds good. But as you say, Kerry was very much a player who played, I can only say, within the parameters of the 6-yard box, from box to box. He would want to be in the middle when the ball's coming in.
Yeah.
David Speedie would work left and right and below him. So Speedo, I think, could have possibly played as a free flowing number 10, or as in these days, the number 10 behind Kerry and myself.
Yeah.
And he would have given teams major problems, because then you've got Mickey Thomas on one wing, you've got Pat Nevin on the other. You know they're going to get crosses in. It would have just meant tweaking the system to go 4-3-3, or shall we say 3-5-2, just to fit me in. And I think because the team had done so well as a 4-4-2 in the previous years, I think John didn't want to change a system just to fit me in. But as you say, it may well have worked, and we may well have been a more potent force going forward with 3 players like that, 2 definite goal scorers, and 1 Speedo coming in late and scoring fantastic headers as a 5'8", 5'9" person. So it would have been more defensive to think of, rather than just saying, right, there's Kerry, there's Speedo, there's Kerry, there's Gordon, and just marking those 2. But as I said, we never know. And people would have said, if we played that formation, that John Hollins was years ahead of his time, because that's what some teams play now.
One more question on Chelsea, then, Gordon. Yeah. And it's just a quick fire one. What the hell were them cars ever doing behind the goal? Were they staff cars, or were they an advert for a local garage, or what? I could never know. Of all the times I used to watch Chelsea on TV and see those cars parked up, whose cars were they?
They were where the disabled sat.
Oh, right, okay.
Like
3-wheelers or something.
Yes, yeah. And if the disabled people were coming to the game in a car, then literally you could literally drive through the main entrance, down the ramp, and just park up, usually on the right hand side. As you're playing towards a shed, it would be on the left. There was always disabled sort of 3-wheelers there, which was an absolutely fantastic viewing point for, especially in front of the shed, because Chelsea generally played towards the shed in the second half. But
I heard sometimes so many rumours of what they were. They were advert, for a local garage. They were staff cars, but no one's. Now you've really crossed that route. I thought it'd be a better answer, to be honest. But main road. Now I remember as a kid going to Main Road. And a kid when the old shed and doing that during your time.
Yeah.
Main Road, the kickbacks. What a huge stand that was. Coming out to Main Road, I bet that was some row you were coming out of while you were playing there.
It was fantastic. It's a shame that, yes, they've got a massive stadium now. There's no atmosphere there, but Main Road was one of those. If I use the phrase old grounds, because a lot of them have changed now, it was one of those old grounds that created an absolutely fantastic atmosphere. The banter that you could get sometimes off the people in the kickbacks, and I think it held probably 30,000. Because when I went there, you would come out of the tunnel and it was directly opposite you, and it was always ram packed. And the support that you got from that side of the ground, and really it is strange when you look at it, because you tend to think that the main vocal support at any ground is behind one goal. It's the home end one end, is the away end the other. But at Main Road, because it was the kickbacks and because you could cram so many thousands of supporters in there, the volume that came from that side of the ground was absolutely fantastic. And I could say there's nothing like it in my experience. And I've played at some grounds where I played at Newcastle, and my ears have popped because of the noise of the crowd. I've played at Roker Park when people used to talk about the Roker Roar.
Roker Roar, yeah.
But when we played there, because we played well, I was disappointed because I never heard the Roker Roar. It was we subdued them. But the kickbacks, and you speak to any City supporter about Main Road, and they'll always come back to the kickbacks. And with it being terracing, you could prize people in there, prize another 1,000 people in there if you wanted to. But it was a fantastic. I loved playing at Main Road, and I loved if I scored at Main Road celebrating with the kickbacks, because they're a fantastic bunch of people.
So you tag back Man City, enjoyable?
What was that?
You tag back Man City, things enjoyable.
But I loved playing there. I didn't enjoy playing for Billy McNeil. Billy McNeil was a bit of a bully, a bit of a tyrant, and was, to be perfectly honest with you, an absolute pain in the arse to work for. when you sign for a club, you look at who's in charge. You look at what they've done. They got promoted under him. Before the season that I went to Chelsea, they got promoted. We beat them 5-1 at the Cottage, and I scored 4 that day. So I always wanted to do well against Man City. But when I went there, I was looking so forward to working with him, because when you look at his CV, he's basically the person who's done everything in the game, did everything in Scotland, a Scottish international, won the European Cup, got City promoted. He's the ideal person that has got the CD, he's got the T-shirt, he's got the autograph, he's done everything. So you're looking forward to working with him. And literally, when I went there, I could see the experienced players were being treated appallingly. He was always trying to undermine them, didn't want to listen to what they were saying about certain things on the pitch, and it had to be done his way, or the highway, I suppose, is the phrase. And I suppose, although I loved the squad of players that were there, I loved playing in front of the Main Road crowd, I loved playing at Main Road, I just didn't enjoy working with Billy McNeil. And I suppose the icing on the cake, or the final nail in my coffin, was when we got through to the full Members' Cup final, and we were playing Chelsea.
I actually watched highlights of that about a month ago, because it was a crazy game, I tell you.
it was ridiculous. But because there were 2 games in 2 days. Chelsea had played away at Southampton on the Saturday, and then they were at Wembley on the Sunday. We'd played away at Old Trafford on the Saturday, and 4 or 5 players were rested. There was myself, Mick McCarthy, I think Graham Baker, may even be Neil McNabb, were rested because we were playing the following day at Wembley. Yeah. And then we got down to Wembley, and we went into the changing rooms. And again, I'm cutting this story, trimming it a bit. And the team was mentioned, and the sub was mentioned, and I'm sitting in between Neil McNabb and Graham Baker. And Neely sort of put out his arm and touched my leg, and I turned to look at him, and he said, "Are you not playing?" And I just said, "Well, it doesn't look like it." And then Graham Baker nudged me on the other side. He said, "I didn't hear your name." And I went, "No, it wasn't called out." And as they were going to not necessarily get ready, but for the game, because we're still an hour before the game, I just got up. I wished the lads all the best and just walked out of the changing room and went onto the pitch. And to this day, I still don't know why I was left out of 2 cup finals on the same weekend, because the Manchester derby, I could understand a lot of the Manchester players or kids were pushed into that game because of local rivalry. And the Chelsea game, I knew for a fact that I'd always scored goals against Chelsea. The back 4 weren't looking forward to playing for me or playing against me. And even in the magazine that Chelsea brought out, literally everybody that had an interview in the Chelsea magazine said the person that they've got to look out for is me, because I've always scored goals and given Chelsea a hard time, and I wasn't even subbed. So when that happened, then you start wondering why the manager didn't take you to one side to explain, or why he's even dropped you from the game the previous day if you weren't going to be playing on the Sunday. So that was the final nail with Billy McNeil and the staff there. And literally, I think it was the beginning of the next season. I think City had brought in Trevor Christie to partner me up front. And literally within, I think, 3 months, I'd left to go to back to Fulham, because I was told in no uncertain terms, even if I stayed at Man City and fought for my place, I wouldn't get picked. And Trevor Christie, who'd only signed in the summer, within 3 months, I think he's been sold. And Billy McNeil had gone to Aston Villa. Yeah. So it was a dumbfounding sort of time at City, because both Trevor and myself were looking forward to forming a good partnership together. And literally within 3 months of the start of the season, I think we'd both been sold.
I think even in the years following Gordon, City were very unstable club about during that period, weren't they? Very unstable.
I'm trying to think of Peter Swales.
That's right.
I think he was very much of the opinion that if we're losing money, we've just got to sell someone. I don't care who it is, we've just got to sell someone. And although there were other clubs that were interested in talking to me, I'd had a word with Ray Lewington, and I thought, to be perfectly honest with you, I've spent 2 years in the old First Division. I've proved to myself and other people that I can score goals at that level. Let's go back to Fulham and try and get them out of the old Third Division. Let's try and get them back into the Second Division in the last maybe 2, 3, 4 years of my playing career. And if I can do that, then at least I'll have helped Fulham in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, so you go back to I won't call it spiritual home, because your spiritual home was Pendant Park to me, Gordon. But you go back to Fulham, and you start scoring those goals again for And while all this is going on, I've been so interested, Gordon, but while all this has been going on, you've obviously had a great Wales career as well.
Well, I wouldn't say it was great. I had a Welsh career, but it wasn't great.
Yeah, I know, but it included some real memorable games. Games.
It is strange. Sorry to butt in, but it is strange with regards to that, because it wasn't until I'd finished playing that somebody turned round to me, a friend who I was at college with, and he'd supported me throughout my career, from playing with him at college and then getting into the league. He always turned up at a game, and whether it was Fulham away or Chelsea away, Man City away, even Wrexham away, and he'd make sure that I knew he was there. So I'd get him a ticket, he'd come and watch the game. And it was only probably about 5, 6, even 10 years after I finished playing that he turned round to me and said, when we were having a drink one night, he said, "Do you realise?" He said, "You always play your Welsh career down, even though you played 16 times for your country. You've always said to me, even if I'd have only played once for my country, I would have realised a dream." And I said, "Yeah, that's what I've always said. If I'd have played once, or I'd have come on in the last 5 minutes of a game, and I'd have played for my country, and I've got that cap that I can put to one side, I would have been pleased." And he said, "But I bet you've never thought about it this way, though." I went, "Oh, come on." I said, "Tell me." And he said, "Well, at one moment in time, you were one of the 11 best players in your country." And I had to think about it for a while. And he said, going on from that, because most people played 4-4-2 in those days.
Yeah.
When you think of all the players that have played up front for Wales, at one moment in time, you were one of the best 2 strikers in your country. And this is from an English person telling me. And I said, "Well, I've never thought about it like that before." And he said, "No." He said, "I know you haven't, because you always put your Welsh career down. But that's what you've got to think of. At one moment, you are one of the best 11 footballers in your entire country. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. You are one of the best 11 footballers." And from that point, I thought, well, yeah, perhaps I'm putting not myself down a bit, but perhaps I'm putting the career, or getting to that level and playing, because everybody as a kid, you want to play for your country. And I was able to, but I've never been one to bump my career up, bump my goals up. But yeah, when you think of it that way, it's something certainly to be proud of. And even though my Welsh cap is in a box and it's in the loft, it's one of those situations that I will never, ever sort of look at that and not feel proud and know you've achieved something in your life.
I mean, and another thing as well, Gordon, I don't know if you would agree with me on this, but this is why I think the modern day international statistics, goals, games, and so on, you can't really compare nowadays to what it was like back then, because you didn't have all the number of friendlies you have back then. Back then you didn't have the amount of games internationally. So even though it may look like a small amount of games, small amount of appearances, actually, when you look at it, how many games are actually played, the ratio is far better than what people may think of nowadays.
Well, it is strange as well, because when we were playing in World Cup qualifying groups and European Championship groups, we always found ourselves in a group of 5 teams, and only one qualified. And we were in with some, shall I say, some very, very good European teams at the time. And we always just came up a bit short. I think, I could be wronging this, but I think on 2 occasions we lost out either on goal difference or by 1 point from qualifying. And it's heartbreaking when you know that only one team's going to go through now, because the World Cup's expanded, the European Championship's expanded. There's now sort of 2 teams going through. There's a playoff sometimes for if you finish third in the group.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is different, I think. And you look at the goals that people score these days, and you just look at sort of the amount of goals that Ronaldo and Messi have scored in their careers. And yes, they've played to some fantastic teams, but on average they are scoring 25, 30, 35, 40 goals a season. And I tell you what, if Ronaldo had been playing in my day, he probably wouldn't have played half the games that he played when he's got up to sort of 500 goals. Because the defenders, and people who are our age would know, the defenders, if I use a phrase, would have sorted him out.
We are.
That comes to mind. And of course, he would have been injured for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, broken leg, out for 3 months. And he's got to come back, and he's got to then get into a situation of, or out of the situation, is this going to happen to me again? Am I going to get another broken leg? Because players are coming in and whacking them. And
I'm convinced, Gordon, and I've said it a number of times now to the younger generations, because that's part of the reason of my YouTube channel, really. To sort my mental health out regarding COVID, because it's good to talk to people, but also as well, I want to, because I'm getting to that older generation bracket now, I want to try and educate the younger generations that it's more to football than just the Premier League, La Liga, and Serie A. And one of the things I keep on trying to knock home to people, the younger generations, is that when they try and say, they try and debate who is the best player, you can't really compare, basically, because if Maradona, the tackles Maradona had to put through, tackles Maradona had to put up with were done on both Ronaldo and Messi. I'm convinced neither Ronaldo or Messi would have played after they were 30, because their legs and kneecaps and ankles would have been done by now.
Yeah. I had to learn to be honest with you, Brownie. I had to learn to play, especially in the first 15 minutes of every game. I had to learn to play 1 and 2 touch football, followed by a small jump, and the jump may only be 1 inch, 2 inches. And what that enabled me to do was to take a sliding tackle or a centre half coming through the back of my standing leg and breaking my ankle, breaking my leg. So because my foot, and it was literally touch, just a little hop, that's all it was, to get my standing foot just off the ground. So when they caught me, my standing foot, instead of going wallop, it would just go like that. And yes, I'd fall on top of them. I might get a few bruises down the back of my calf muscles, across my ankles, but I wouldn't get a broken leg. And that's what you had to do, because in the first 15 minutes of the game, it was, I suppose, an unwritten law that the referee wouldn't book them, wouldn't send them off for that first 2 or 3 challenges, but after you've whacked into him 2 or 3 times in the first 15 minutes, then the centre half or the defenders would get, in inverted commas, a stern talking to by the referee. And then they knew, if I do one more, I'm going to get booked. But I've had 5 fouls on me by the same person, and nowadays that doesn't happen. You get 1, and then you're in the book a second time. Sometimes you do 1, and it's not even a bad tackle these days. But because, and the funniest thing, going to today's games, because there's no crowd there, when they do get a little knock, you hear the almighty scream that comes from the players.
I know. It's embarrassing.
And this is not only forwards. This is big, hard centre halves as well.
I know.
And you just think, what has the game come to? So yeah, I agree with you. The game has changed out of all recognition, but I must admit, I've watched some of the old televised big matches, which you can get on Sky these days.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy watching them because people take a right whack and they roll once, they get up, they get on with the game.
I was told, I don't know. Sorry, I don't know if you watched the interview a few days ago. I talked to Terry Phelan, Gordon, the old former Ireland
Man City.
Playing Man City as well. Well, he played in that Wimbledon Liverpool Cup final in '88.
Ah, right. Yeah,
and we were talking about exactly the same thing because Vinnie Jones went through Steve McMahon first minute. Fair play to Steve McMahon, he got up, but you didn't hear anything from Steve McMahon throughout that game. And we both know Steve McMahon was basically the engine of that Liverpool midfield back in those days.
Yeah.
So if you stop that engine,
he could dish it out as well. But every team in those days, and you can look at even coming from the '60s. You look at Leeds, and they had Giles and Bremner, two little nasty players in the middle of the park, but boy, could they play football. And then you just go through the years, and you could pick out Souness as being a hard man at Liverpool. You could go as far as saying Roy Keane being the hard man but every team had what they used to use the word an enforcer. And from a small forwards point of view, as long as you knew that somebody had your back, if I took a whack or if I really got walloped, then somebody in my team would make sure that that player got walloped at some point, if not in that game, because it could have been the last 5 minutes, when they come down to the cottage or when they come to Main Road, then somebody would say, yeah, he was the one that did you last time, I'll do him. And they did. It was you had to stand up and be counted in the old days. Nowadays you fall over and you're counted.
I know, it is embarrassing.
That's a good word to use, embarrassing.
It is, honestly. I mean, some of these players are built like, very muscular, let's just say. And it's the minute of touches. And the most minute of touches is pushing over 6'5" guys. It's kind of like if you went down the supermarket and you acted like that, you'd be knocked over 6 times before you get to the milk aisle.
If I was playing these days, Brownie, and you know me, I'm a small, quick, nimble forward, I would be classed as a hatchet man, because I would be going in for tackles, and I would be thinking, well, there's nothing wrong in that tackle. I've not even caught him, but I've slid underneath him. He's fallen on top of me, and we've both gone off the pitch and into the holdings. For something like that, I would be sent off these days because I'm out of control and my follow through, and I can't fight my way out of a wet paper bag. So, but it is embarrassing these days, and unfortunately, people have a go at the officials, but it's not the officials. It's it's the laws of the game, and the officials have been told, if this happens, you've got to do that. And unfortunately, it is making a muck of you.
And it doesn't help. Last point on this, but it doesn't help, Gordon, when TV pundits and even VAR now, they're looking at things that in slow motion, and the game is not played in slow motion. And that doesn't help at all. It's slow motion. You can think someone's really gone through someone. When normal speed, it may not look so bad.
You've got to look at it at normal speed, and then you've got to have somebody with regards to VAR. And I must say, I was egging on for something like this to happen about 15 years ago.
Me too.
But the phrase that I used to use was in those days it was a multi-million-pound business. It's a £1 billion business now, and I said you've got to get the big decisions right.
Yeah.
And it was brought in. I thought, thank goodness they're going to get the big decisions right. But when they are now trying to tell me that if I am running this way and my arm where the shirt sleeve is offside, but my head and the rest of my body is level with the defender on this side,
Yeah.
they are trying to do what happens at Wimbledon. And when a small tennis ball comes down at 150 miles an hour and spreads out because of the pace it's going, and they can say it's 2 millimeters out, brilliant. But when the hardest thing to do in the game is score goals,
Yeah.
and they are now trying to make it even harder after maybe 3 or 4 years ago, they were saying there's got to be clear daylight and you should give the attacker the benefit of the doubt. They've gone completely the opposite way. And in my opinion, the officials do not know how best to use VAR, and they are turning a lot of people off the professional game. And more people, even Fulham supporters, have been in touch with me now. They said they're going to enjoy the Championship more next year because there's no VAR.
Yeah. Yeah.
What can you do?
Well, last club on your career, Gordon. Well, professional career, Wrexham.
Yeah.
Now, I do have a lot of Arsenal fans who are very keen to be watching the show later on. And hello to the Arsenal fans there. But you joined back up with Mickey Thomas, who was with you at Chelsea, at Wrexham. And
Joey Jones as well.
Joey Jones, yeah.
Yeah.
I know Steve Watkin was there as well, but even I always have this debate. I think the Wrexham Arsenal FA Cup game is, in my opinion, the biggest upset in FA Cup history. I really do think that. People will go on to say Coventry Sutton United, which was a few years before. But Arsenal were then the league champions, and Wrexham were in a lowly position, and it was just incredible. I remember watching it, like on grandstand. And obviously match of the day later on. But what was it? What was that like to play in Gordon?
Well, as soon as the draw came out, there was such a buzz around the racecourse ground and with the players and the staff, because yes, as you said, the previous season Arsenal had won the league, and Wrexham had actually finished 92nd in the Football League.
Yeah.
Because there was no relegation that year, Wrexham kept their place in the league. So effectively, apart from going into non-league and non-league teams beating league teams, that's the biggest gap that you can get in the Football League. There were 91 places between Arsenal and us. So as I said, the place was buzzing. I think initially, because a big mate of mine, which was the reason to going to Wrexham, was Brian Flynn, who was manager.
Yeah.
Flinny and myself go back to the under-15 Welsh schoolboy team, and he was captain of that. So we've known each other from 15 years of age, or I was a bit younger than him. So when I eventually signed for them, and we came around to the Arsenal game, I honestly think that in Brian's mind, first of all, it was damage limitations. What we don't want to do is to go out there, and I suppose the only phrase you can use is be humiliated and lose the game 6-0, 7-0, whatever. And he made a couple of changes with regards to the team, and when the day of the game came, obviously there were thousands outside the ground just waiting to get in, probably 2 hours before the game. All the pubs were packed. When I was driving in, so I lived about half an hour from Wrexham. When I was driving in, probably 20 minutes from the ground. When you come into the surrounding Wrexham area, all you could see was red and white scarves at every pub and people outside drinking on the road, because you just couldn't get any more in the pub. And I think they were all having a drink in the pub there before they were working their way towards the ground. So it was a fantastic atmosphere. Obviously, we didn't know what type of team Arsenal were going to put out. We were hoping, I think the players were, that it was going to be possibly, if I say it, the usual that goes now. You put the second team out. You put those players who haven't generally been playing in the team. But it was virtually a full first team, apart from one player. And the one player that we were concerned about, and Brian was concerned about, because we were trying to play a very sort of flat back four. And the one player that we were worried about was Ian Wright.
Yeah.
Because Wrighty, fantastic player, great goal scorer, quick off the mark. He would have caused us major problems. And the team sheet came in, and it was virtually a full team, full Arsenal team, first team, but no Ian Wright because he was injured. And Brian came across to me with Kevin Reeves, who it was his assistant, and he said, I think we're in with a chance tonight. I said, how do you say that? He said, because he said, right, he's not playing. And I went, well, that's one bit of good news. But I said, just give me a look at the team sheet. And I looked at the team sheet, and you go sort of Winterburn, Adams, Bold, safe hands in the net, and you could think this is a first team. And of course, when the team was mentioned to all the players, and I could see we had a very young, inexperienced team. Joey was injured, so up in the run-up to the game, I think it was the Daily Mirror came round to the training ground and took a photograph of Joey Jones, myself, Mickey Thomas.
Yeah.
And they put it in, and now they were talking to us about our experience and the game coming up against Arsenal. And the headline, because I think I was about 36, Joey was 38 or 37, Mickey was about 35. So the average age of the three of us, we'll put it all together, and it was sort of in the 112 to 118 mark, something like that. And the big headline that I can remember in the Daily, I think it was the Daily Mirror, was Wrexham Wrinklies. And it just had the photograph of the three of us after training. And of course, then it went on a big article, one or two pages. And I could see that Joey's a good character, Mickey's a good character, but I could see that Mickey was even a bit quiet before the game. So Joey was his usual self, but all the youngsters were very, very quiet. And I was thinking to myself, what can I do just to break the tension in the changing rooms? Because we're only now about 15 minutes away to going out to play against Arsenal's basically first team, the first team that won the championship the year before. And I thought, well, the only thing I can do is to just try and make something up, make the lads forget about what's happening. So I went across to the old table in the corner where the big metal pot of tea was that holds about 40 pots of tea, and I poured a full polystyrene cup full of hot tea. And when I turned around, Brian was going to say something. I said to Brian, I said, just be quiet for 30 seconds. And he said, yeah, okay. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know yet. So I picked the tea up, and as I turned around, I started shaking the tea like that. So I better not do it. I was thinking, so I started shaking the cup like this, and I turned to all the lads, and I said, don't worry, lads. I said, there's nothing to worry about. And of course, this scalding hot tea was coming over my hand, and I was trying. And in the end, I've just had to drop the tea because it was roasting my fingers. And of course, when I started doing this, I said, look, there's nothing to worry about. I've been there, I've done it, no need to worry. The lads started laughing, and when of course I had to drop the tea because I went, oh, like that. And it just relieved all the tension that the lads had.
Yeah.
And we're only 10 minutes before the game now, and everything was sort of back to normal in the changing room. And as I said, we went out. We shall I say, we were under the cosh. They could have scored more than the one that they got early on. But we showed a hell of a lot of character to come back to, shall we say, you remember Mickey Thomas's goal. He'd been practicing that all week. He basically couldn't hit a barn door from 5 yards. Always in training. So we just thought, right, we'll give him one more chance. He's in the game against Arsenal. We give him one more chance, Mickey. And he smashed it in the top left-hand corner. Yeah. And David Seaman's fingers literally were just underneath it. You couldn't have placed it in a better position. And of course, when that went in, the place erupted. Everybody went berserk. And fortunately for Steve Watkins' goal, well, as I say, for the free kick, I'm trying to think of the centre half now, who was all over me like a rash.
Bold, is it? Bold?
No, it's not. It's not Bold. It's the Irish centre half. The Irish centre half, which is managed Leeds. No, managed Leeds later on in his career.
Oh, O'Leary, David O'Leary.
David O'Leary. Sorry, I couldn't remember his name.
Yeah, no.
David O'Leary found me for the free kick, and then I ran him. And to this day, he says, "I never touched you," and he was all over me like a bad rash. so we disagree on that, me and the old man. And then I ran down, made a run down the right hand side of the pitch late on, got into position, crossed it to try to get to Steve Watkin, and Tony Adams miscontrolled it. And then Steve Watkins just got that half a yard and put it past the keeper, Seaman. So to be perfectly honest with you, it was a fantastic day. It ended up a fantastic night. And I must say, George Graham, he popped his head into the Wrexham changing room when we're all singing, there's beer going everywhere, there's champagne going everywhere. And he just turned around and he said, "Well played, lads." He said, "All the best in the next round," and closed the door. And fair play for somebody like that. Just to do that was a very nice thought from him. Even though we found out later, he said to the Arsenal players, right, get in the change room, get on the bus. We're getting out of this toilet hole, I think is the nicest way of putting it. And we're getting back to London. So that was the first thing he said after the game. But for him just to put his head in and say, "Well done, lads, all the best in the next round," it was a bit of class from somebody who's obviously hurting at the time.
Yeah, no, fair. Well, and sadly brought you into your playing career. You did try management. Now I do also have a couple of well, one of my best YouTuber friend is from Norway as well. So you tried your hand in Norwegian management.
Yeah.
What was that experience like, Gordon? And looking back, do you wish you had continued pursuing a managerial career after that?
Yeah, I did want to go into coaching. I hadn't taken my coaching badges by then. Well, in those days, you had three options. Well, you took three badges. You took your prelim, your intermediary, which was a week's course, I think, and then 2 weeks at Lilleshall. Or I could have done it with the Welsh FA and did 2 weeks at Aberystwyth. So you could get your coaching badge literally in one season.
Yeah.
When I went out to Norway, and it came via, and you'd know this name, a chap that's been associated with Cardiff, a chap called Eddie May.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Well, Eddie was
passed away last year.
Yes. Unfortunately, yeah. Nice lad, and a good football person. But Eddie had a word. Eddie was manager out there at the club called Tornado the previous season, and then he'd left, and then the local manager went in when they were in the old third division and got promoted to the second division. So Eddie, then they got in touch with Eddie and they said they wanted a British coach. Did he know of anybody? So he was talking to Brian Flynn one day and said, do you know anybody that might be interested in doing some coaching out in Norway? So Brian said, well, Gordon wants to go into coach. I'll have a word with him. So he had a word with me and I said, yes, I'm interested. So I got in touch with the club. And then a really weird situation set up, because I was supposed to go out there in January to start my job, because it would have been pre-season out there in January. We got drawn against Arsenal in the cup. So I said, well, okay, what I'll do, they booked me a flight for the following Tuesday after the Arsenal game, because that's when I was going to go out there. As ever, we end up beating Arsenal. So they had to cancel the flight. And then we got drawn against West Ham at Upton Park in the next round. So I spoke to the chairman and he said, right, he said, what I've done, you're playing West Ham at Upton Park on this date. I've booked you a flight on the following Tuesday. So we've gone down to West Ham. We've got a 1-1 draw. So there's now a replay. So he phoned me up. He said, I've cancelled the flight. He said, what I've done, I haven't booked anything at the moment because now we're playing West Ham at the racecourse in the replay. So he hadn't booked a flight. And then we end up losing 1-0 in the replay. And then he booked a flight for the following week. So then I went out. It was I was the only sort of full-time person there. All the players were part-time. They all had jobs. We trained on a sort of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, and then we played on a Saturday. I thoroughly enjoyed it. We didn't have the best of times with injuries because my right back broke his arm, so he had his arm in plaster, so he couldn't play. My left-sided attacking midfield player injured his spleen, so he was taken out and he couldn't play. My centre forward was put on 2 weeks national service, where he was taken out and sent to the north of Norway. So he was literally in sub-zero temperatures doing
just a few miles away from you, then.
Yeah. So he couldn't turn up for training. And my goal scorer, who scored sort of 30 goals the year before, he got done for drink driving. And so he wasn't allowed to play for about 3 weeks, I think 4 weeks. So my idea of the management and coaching out there was, because they got promoted from a local league, they were now put in with some big boys from Oslo and Bergen, especially Oslo. And we were playing against, in some teams from the Oslo area, we were playing against some ex-professionals and ex-internationals. So my idea was just to try and keep them in the division that year so that we can build from there. And we were doing okay. But the owner, if I said the owner of the club, the chairman wanted me to stay. The players wanted me to stay. But the owner, who was basically paying the money, he was of the opinion that because we'd been promoted the year before and won the league at a canter, we were going to get promoted from the second division to the first division. And there was no that was his idea, but I was able to get one player in who was my best player of the year, and that was a centre half. And this shows how bad it got. When you're a Welsh international forward, played all your career, apart from the bits in from 16 probably to 20 as a midfield player, I ended up playing sweeper with everybody in front of me so I could tell them where to go and what to do. And then when I sort of stepped back and tried to get them to do it, it was difficult. But the owner wanted me out. But the chairman, when he effectively sacked me, was in tears, and then the players turned around and said, "If you're getting the sack as our coach, we want you to stay on as a player, because without you being on the pitch with us, we won't stay in this league." And I had to make a decision of either playing the rest of the season as a player,
Yeah.
which wasn't good for the team, which was maybe good for
Yeah,
me
team
because I was getting
morale.
paid. But I said to them that no, really, I said I don't want to put any of you in a bad situation, and that I'm going to leave. I'm going to go back home. They had a meeting, and the players turned round, and this shows what kind of people they are, and how they felt about me. They said, "We know that the owner doesn't want you, but we as players do." And we've had a meeting, and the players have said that we will pay your wages till the end of the season.
Jeez.
And I thought, it's such a nice offer for you to do that, but I can't really take money off you when the owner is not really convinced that
Yeah.
I'm the right person for the job. So I left on very, very good terms with the chairman, with all the players. They were despondent to see me go, but at the end of the season they got relegated, and I think they've been relegated in these years. They've been relegated maybe once, two, three times in that period. But I loved doing it. I really enjoyed it, and it was a shame that when I came back to this country, I was living up in Cheshire. I applied for the Chester job when it came up, but it was already, in inverted commas, it was already given to an ex-Chester player before the advert had come around. And then I had to sit down and talk to my wife about it. Do I really want to start chasing my coaching jobs around the country and be 2 years at Grimsby, 3 years at Plymouth, two years at Notts County, that type of thing? Or I had to make a decision, or go out into the real world, get another job, full-time job, and go from there. And that's what we did. So the coaching side of it never sort of grew more than when I was out in Norway.
Well, I'm disappointed in you, Gordon. I am. As a Merthyr man, I thought he would have left that chairman in Norway and dished out an agreement for Jose Mourinho style golden handshake. I'm very disappointed. You know that.
It would have been nice. It would have been nice if he'd have turned around and given me half his fishing fleet. I probably would have managed that. But yeah, as I say, it's one of those things that happens. There is a major story of how can I say, of a possible coaching role within football that will definitely be in the book, but definitely is in here, and it's staying in here at the moment. But that's one for the book, and that'll be a total chapter by itself.
So when is the book out, then, Gordon?
Well, we're only talking about it at the moment. I've been putting bits and pieces down on paper for a few months, but really, because I've only literally moved house about 2 weeks ago. We're in a situation probably for the next 6 months, sorting the house out and sorting everything out and trying to get boxes put away, because although you can see a couple of photographs behind me, there's wherever I look in this house at the moment, there's just box on boxes and boxes. It's going to take us 6 months to sort that out, but after that, when we're settled in, then I'm going to sit down and start sort of doing maybe an hour a day, trying to put things together and chronologically go through my career literally from Georgetown, where it all started, right through to Tornado, in Norway, and of course when I came back, Northwich Victoria in the
Northwich,
conference. And of course, I
Yeah,
went back to
I used to
Penarron
play
Park.
for Georgetown as well. I was a Georgetown boy as well.
See, all the good ones play for Georgetown.
Well, I hear that as well. Unfortunately, unfortunately,
Well, the
heard
thing is,
that.
I suppose when you look at it, even if I just take three people, there's myself, there's Tony Rees,
Yeah,
who played for Georgetown and went on to play. There's Mr. Hamer.
Pembridge.
Yeah,
Pembridge.
yeah. Mark Pembridge, yeah, I forgot about
Yeah,
Mark,
yeah.
and he's coaching at Fulham. So there's some excellent players that have played for Fulham. There's for Georgetown, and I must admit, and I'll say this from my heart, there's a lot of players that I played with, and I'll just mention a couple of them. That Stephen Type was at Chelsea as a youngster and was released. Kieran Goggin was at Chelsea as a youngster and was released. I was at Man City as a youngster and released. Just to mention Stephen Type, who could have played as an out-and-out winger in league football. Even when I went to Fulham, I think he was better than some of the wingers that we had. Kieran Goggin had the ability, and he's a better player than Dennis Wise. But Kieran's attitude to training, if I say, wasn't great. And I think that might have been the problem with him not being kept on at Chelsea. But Goggin was good enough to play league football. And one person who I've always said was good enough to play football, and I liken him to a chap that I played at Fulham with, Dean Coney. And Dean was great at holding the ball up, not the greatest goal scorer in the world, but he'd create chances for other people. And he'll be surprised to hear this, but the person that I'm liking to Dean Coney is a chap that played up front at Georgetown, is Graham Powell. And I think Graham could have ended up being a target man in league football. And that's just 3 or 4 players that I played with in the one team. So Georgetown have produced some fantastic footballers over the years. And it's just nice to see how the club has grown from being one team to being what it is today in girls' teams and boys' teams. They've got their own clubhouse. And it's certainly fantastic for me as an old Merthyr boy and an old Georgetown boy to see that the club is going from strength to strength, and people are still playing schools football. Yeah,
no problem. Right, Gordon, we'll leave it there. Can I thank you ever so much? I know that we've been trying to get this going for last month or two, but you stuck by it. You stuck by me, and thank you ever so much for your chat. It's been an hour and a half. It could be a day and a half. I tell you, we could talk.
It's not been an hour and a half, is it? God dear me.
Yeah. I know. But thank you ever so much. Thank you for support. And please, once this book is sorted, we'll have another chat. And I want a copy sent out to you. I tell you.
We will, mate. I'll sign it for you. And next year, always going to be a tough year for Fulham. It'll be interesting to see how we get on against Cardiff City.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with Cardiff now is that this summer the parachute payment is finishing, so I'm predicting a tough year because they're gonna have to fill in the financial holes. 25 million.
Yeah.
So where's Kiefer Moore going to go? I got a feeling he's had such a great season. Funny feeling.
Yeah.
But
well, you never know. We could be looking for a centre forward because Mitrovic isn't very happy. So if Kiefer Moore comes to Fulham, then that'll be something for us to talk about.
I know. Because Bobby Reid, what's Bobby Reid been playing like lately? He was he Cardiff, didn't he?
Yeah, nobody's been playing well. Well, apart from some of the loanees, but nobody's had a great season at Fulham. And I think it's the way that we've tried to play. But I know for a fact that if we try to play that way in the Championship, we'll get caught out and we'll get found out, because a lot of our players will have to step up. And of course, with us, we will probably lose 5 or 6 loanees. So we've got to change our squad as well in the summer. So it's going to be interesting to see who goes where and how we all start the season. Yeah.
It'll be interesting whether or not Scott Parker will keep by you, because there's a lot of clubs sniffing around at the moment, Gordon.
Well, there is, and it's strange to see clubs sniffing around for managers like Scott Parker when we finished 3rd from bottom. Well, we might finish 2nd from bottom. Yeah. It doesn't seem to add up. But I've got to say that you've just got to stick with it, see how the season starts, go with it, and of course. I saw one interview that you had where you're eating a bit of humble pie because you had to go at Mick McCarthy.
I know.
So we'll finish on that. We'll finish on that one.
Gordon, thank you ever so much. And when I'm back in the UK, whether it be London or Merthyr, we'll definitely have a pint. And I look forward to your book. Because this has been such an enjoyable experience.
Good, Brownie. Yeah.
Thank you.
It sounds good, Brownie. You take care, mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye.